Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Folkestone and Hythe District and Parish Councils Joint Committee. Please note this meeting is being streamed live to the internet. Please could all members ensure their microphone is set to mute unless they are speaking to reduce any background noise. So we'll move on to the first item, which is appointment of chair. For the purposes of this meeting, members must appoint a parish or town chair. Do we have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Frank Hobbs for chairman for this evening, if he's prepared to accept.
And we have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Prater. And can I have a show of hands? I think that's everyone. Okay, I'll hand over to you, Frank.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Next item on the agenda is apologies for absence. I know I've seen 3. Have you had Jane Darling?
Yes, just the 3, Chair. Councillors Darling, Burgess, Hayward and Ellison, the 4, sorry.
Just to say, on the apologies that I had seen, at least one of those sets of apologies, that there seemed to be some uncertainty that there had been a calling notice for this meeting emailed to parish members. I know that district members, it automatically arrives in our diaries, so that's great, but I don't know if parish members are getting the same notification in advance, and therefore we are losing much of the point of these contact meetings if they're not being invited to them. I don't know if Frank is aware of is seeing the same problems.
Yes, I am. Two of them in their apologies said they didn't know about the meeting. But somehow along the line the communication has gone wrong. I mentioned it earlier and Jake's going to look into it.
Is it just me, or is I'm having difficulties hearing you, Frank. It sounds like you're in a bucket. I don't know if your microphone isn't being terribly effective. I think you were agreeing that you didn't have a notification, but it's quite hard to tell.
I did, yes, but yeah. Can you hear me now, Tim? Can everybody else hear me or not?
I can hear you, Frank.
It is a bit muffled, but
yes, from our beyond.
Yeah, just a bit muffled.
Okay, I don't know why. Whether that make any difference? Declarations of interest. Has anybody got an interest they need to declare under normal circumstances? We're not a decision-making committee, so probably not. Minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of July have all been circulated. Are you happy for them to be a true record?
Agreed. Yeah.
Happy the true and accurate record, Frank, yes.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Brings us on to item 5, which is the Hythe Health and Care Partnership overview. Don't know who's taking that one.
That's me.
Okay, Anne, thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and good evening, everyone. My name's Anne Ford. I'm Deputy Director at East Kent Health and Care Partnership. And I've been asked to come today just to provide you with a bit of an overview of our kind of how we work within East Kent Health and Care Partnership, but more importantly, how we work with partners across the Folkestone and Hythe district. And I hope that I'll be able to provide you with a good briefing this evening about some of the live work that's happening. And obviously, I'm very happy to take questions. I don't mind if you want to ask me questions while I'm presenting, or whether you want me to do the whole presentation and then I can take questions at the end, whichever suits everybody. Great. So I'm just going to share my screen because I've just prepared a little presentation. And I haven't used Zoom before in this way, so hopefully you will be able to see my screen in a second. Can you see that all okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Now I've lost you guys a little bit, so I'm just going to do that. Brilliant. Okay, so I've prepared this briefing today, which includes kind of a presentation of the overview of the NHS and how we work as a Kent and Medway system, right through to how we work as an East Kent Health and Care Partnership. East Kent Health and Care Partnership was formally recognised as part of the Kent and Medway Integrated Care System in July 2023. And an overarching aim of our work is to improve population health and reduce health inequalities in East Kent. The vision is that this will be achieved by working locally across partner organisations and to recognise that the health outcomes are as equally affected by wider determinants of health, so the things around housing and employment and your social circumstances, which can then have an impact on your health. And obviously I am coming from predominantly a health perspective, but I'm very glad to see that Joyson is on the call today, and there's been an awful lot of work happening with myself and the team and Joyson and Folkestone District Council. The aim of the East Kent Health and Care Partnership is to build collaboration to tackle some of the key local challenges, including the impact on health of poverty and the workforce challenges that the health and care system faces. So I thought it might be helpful if I just really explain very briefly, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it's in the context of why I'm here this evening. I thought it might be helpful just to give a little bit of an overview of the NHS architecture. So I'm just going to drag that down a little bit so you can see that a bit better. So I'm sorry if you already know this as well, so I'll try and go through this quite quickly. So we have an NHS Kent and Medway Integrated Care Board. They are a statutory NHS organisation for leading the NHS in Kent and Medway and one of the leaders in the integrated care system. So that's the box on the far left here. And then the box on the far right here is the Kent and Medway Integrated Care Partnership. So this is a statutory joint committee between the ICB and the upper tier local authorities. And they're responsible for the development of an overarching health and wellbeing strategy and outcome measures. And their latest strategy is on their website. And I've got a link in my presentation slide deck, which I'm very happy to share with everybody afterwards, if you'd like to have a look at that in more depth. So then underneath that architecture, you've got the 4 health and care partnerships, which is East Kent. So I cover the whole of East Kent, but we have a West Kent Health and Care Partnership, Dartford, Gravesham and Swanley, and Medway and Swale. And they're 4 distinct health and care partnerships. Within our NHS also, we have 41 primary care networks across the whole of Kent and Medway. And the primary care networks, sorry if I'm explaining things in too much detail, but they're made up of a group of GP practices with a distinct type population size around them. And they usually have between 50,000 population right up to our biggest PCN has just under 100,000 population registered with their primary care network. And then we're also within East Kent and across the Kent and Medway system, we are made up of lots of different health providers. So we have our acute trust, which is ECHAFT. We have our community trust, which is Kent Community Health Foundation Trust. Our mental health trust, which is KMPT. And then we also work locally with voluntary sector organisations who play such an important role in terms of supporting our population with their health needs and their wider needs. And then obviously the work that we're doing with the district councils as well, which I'm going to go into a bit more depth on. So in terms of East Kent Health and Care Partnership, our vision and our ambition is to improve the population of our health, our population health, and reduce health inequalities, but with a focus on prevention and proactive care. And this diagram is basically showing our 3 pillars of our strategy. So the first pillar is around prevention and wellbeing. So this is about improving access to preventative and health improvement services, including those that focus on the wider determinants of health. Then we have pillar 2, which is about developing integrated neighbourhood teams. And this is about working with community teams to ensure that people have access to the information and services they need in a timely and sustainable way. And then we have our urgent and emergency care flow, which is pillar 3, which is obviously a big part of our NHS system in East Kent. So this is about reducing delays to ambulance services and improving flow through the hospital so that patients are discharged to the right place at the right time and the right support. And we do recognise that the NHS is very, very challenged. I mean, you've probably seen in the news today, the Darcy reports come out, and it's quite damning. So, you know, some of the work that we're doing at a Health and Care Partnership is to try and improve some of those very challenged systems. And then the foundations of working together are kind of our enablers. So the enablers to help us to improve patient care is around our digital and IT systems. It's around having improved communication and engagement with the general population. It's about our estates and is it fit for purpose, and what can we do collectively across all partnerships to improve that situation. And it's also about our workforce challenges, because we know in the NHS that we do have a particular challenge around, 1, having the workforce, 2, retaining, and we know in East Kent that we have a particular kind of problem with encouraging people to come to the coast to work in this area. So who are we? So we are a place-based partnership which is made up of 16 care partnerships. So I mentioned earlier that there was 41 primary care networks across the whole of Kent and Medway, and 16 of those are in East Kent. We work with East Kent Hospitals, NHS Foundation Trust. We work with Kent and Medway, NHS and Social Care, Kent Community Health. We work with Kent County Council Public Health and also social care. We work with the district councils. We're connected with IC24, which is our out of hours provision for patients. We have Health Watch that sit on our Health and Care Partnership board. And they very much kind of look at how we're doing our engagement with the general population as well. We've got really strong relationship with the voluntary and community sector, and we work with CCAM as well. So I don't want to labour this slide too much, but I just thought it would be helpful from a governance perspective to understand where the Health and Care Partnership sits within all of that NHS architecture. So we're bang in the middle, but we report into the Kent and Medway Integrated Care Board through this ICB Place Oversight Committee. So they hold us to account for the work that we're doing through those 3 pillars that I've just described. And we also report into the Kent and Medway Integrated Care Partnership as well. And the bit that I want to focus in or just get your attention on is this East Kent Wellbeing and Health Improvement Partnership, because this is where we deliver a lot of our work with our partners, and Joycener is a member of that group. And through the work that we do here, we provide reports and outcomes of any of our evaluation into the East Kent Health and Care Partnership Board. So it gets very good oversight in terms of what we're doing in this group, how these operational groups down here are also feeding into the work that we do here, which then exposes the work and the partnership through this particular group quite vividly, and that's where, you know, district councils and the work that we do there, that would be highlighted here, but then it's reported up here as well. So the integrated care system purpose is to improve outcomes in population health and healthcare, to tackle inequalities in outcomes, experience and access to services, enhance productivity and value for money, and help the NHS to support broader social economic development. So what is the population profile? So in East Kent, we have the largest place-based partnership in the country. And we have a population size of 734,000, but we're forecast to grow by 7.3% by 2028. This graph on the right-hand side, I just wanted to bring your attention to, but basically the number of people aged 65 and over is forecast to increase by 35% by 2036. And also the number of people aged 85 and over are expected to increase by 70% over the same period. So we're expecting this massive incline in the older population, and obviously we need to plan for that as best we possibly can in terms of the care and infrastructure that we will require. So what about health inequalities? So I'm sure that all of you guys are very much aware of this, but just as a reminder, that in our coastal communities and our villages and towns and cities of England's coast, we have some of the worst health outcomes in England with low life expectancy. So people who live in the poorest parts of East Kent are more likely to develop serious illnesses and to die earlier than those in the most affluent areas. 25% are more likely to die from heart disease in our poorer areas, 20% more from cancer, and then you've got 50% more from lung disease before the age of 75 than in the wealthiest areas of East Kent. KCC Public Health have secured East Kent to be the first Marmot Coastal Community Programme. And what this means is that we're going to be connected to a community of practice, which is a national programme, where we're going to be able to learn from best practice in other areas. But what's important about this is that KCC are investing in dedicated resource to support us in East Kent to help improve the circumstances of our populations in our most deprived communities. The darker colours on this key here represent 1 is the most deprived, right through to 10 where it's the least deprived. And I've got a bit more information specifically around the Folkestone area on that. This slide is a PCN, it's a local Folkestone and Hythe rural profile tool. And this has been developed by KCC Public Health with Medway Authority Public Health team. And essentially they've used all of their data that they can access to identify some of the indicators that are better, similar, worse, or higher than the national average. And so the colours here show you where we need to kind of potentially focus our attention. So you'll see there for the Folkestone and Hythe and rural area, pupil absence for primary school is worse than the national average. We do have some greens and we do have some better than the average, which is really, really good. But from a health and care partnership, and when we're working with district council colleagues or we're working with voluntary sector and we're looking at projects, we would use our data to kind of take a population health approach to the way in which we deliver some of our work. So you can see there we've got some higher. So we've got obesity prevalence is higher amongst the population. We have A&E attendances for 0 to 4-year-olds worse than the national average. Coronary heart disease prevalence is higher. And you can see there's some other ones there that are higher as well. So when we're thinking about the work that we want to do, we really do need to look at our data and focus our attention. Here's a map of the local area for Folkestone. And again, obviously, you know your wards really, really well, but you've got the sliding scale from the darkest colour to the lightest colour, darker meaning that it's the more deprived areas. So that's where we would expect to see higher levels of disease prevalence and higher levels of health inequalities. So demographics. So this is quite interesting as well. So if I just quickly explain the colours. So the males are these long lines here, and this is the Folkestone and Hythe rural population, and the females are on the right-hand side here. The pink line that's going around the outside is the Kent and Medway average, and England is the black line that's going around, and you can see that there. So for Folkestone and Hythe, you can see that we have more older age group over the age of 55 up to 95 that's higher than the national average and our Kent and Medway system average. So you can see that that's significantly much greater. And as I said earlier, our growth and our aging population is due to increase quite significantly, and it's important from a health perspective that we're working now to try and put the right provision in place to be able to help us manage that. This is our ethnicity and main language for the area as well. So pink is the Folkestone and Hythe rural area and grey is the Kent and Medway. And then you've got the language there as well. And obviously you can see there you've got more of a Nepalese community, first language, and other, white other is a little bit higher there as well. So what are our enablers? So what do we need to do differently to try and help us, because we know we're all really stretched. We know that resources are tight. So how are we going to try and do things differently? So the focus right from the NHS ICS, like the integrated care system, right through to the health and care partnership, is to have a focus on population health management approach, which is looking at our data, looking at the wider determinants of health, making data-driven decisions to help with targeting resource and focusing on trying to reduce inequalities in healthcare access. We need to move from a competitive kind of environment between different providers and looking at working more collaboratively and in partnership. And we're going to be better if we can work more collectively together and to support our workforce, irrespective of whether you work in the NHS, whether you work in community voluntary sector organisation, or whether you're a frontline district council member of staff. We want to be able to work more together, and we also want to really celebrate what we do well, because I think we get a really bad press a lot of the time. This is the slide I just mentioned earlier, so I've just put some links in there for further information, so I'll make sure I get this sent out to everybody. Maybe I could do that through Joyce now, but there's more information here about the national picture around the NHS and then what we're trying to do and how we're trying to mirror that locally. So the role of East Kent Wellbeing and Health Improvement Partnership is a mechanism, as I showed you on the governance structure. This is where we really want to drive our work forward. So the purpose of this group is to bring together the district councils, public health, voluntary sector and wider partners to agree and deliver priorities for the prevention of ill health to support wellbeing across the population of East Kent. It also prioritises delivery against the issues identified in the East Kent needs assessment. So that would have been the needs assessment that had been developed by KCC Public Health, but they're actually doing a refresh of that information at the moment, and we're likely to get a new data set in November of this year. But that helps us to drive delivery and develops that sort of consistent approach and best practice. The memberships are there in terms of who attends. And we have obviously all of the district councils there, including Folkestone, and Joyce is a fantastic partner. I don't know how we would actually get anything done without Joyce, because she's such an advocate for us doing the best by the population and the local need. So just moving on to the next few slides. So I just wanted to take a bit of time just to talk through some of the current examples of work that we're doing, but specifically in the Folkestone and Hythe area. So what I've done here is I've bullet pointed some of those projects, and then in the subsequent slides, there's a little bit more detail about what we're doing against each of these projects. But I'm not going to go into loads of detail because I realise it's evening. I'm sure people want to sort of get on with their evening as well. But I wanted to highlight some of the partnership work that we're doing in East Kent Health and Care Partnership. So the first element of our work is that we do have a small budget to address health inequalities, and this money has come from Kent and Medway Integrated Care Board. This funding, part of the governance, is managed through the Wellbeing Health Improvement Partnership Steering Group. And I've given some examples there of some of the projects that we're doing. So we've got a homelessness pathway team that works from each of the hospital trusts. And I've got a bit more information about why that is an issue, and I'm going to go through that in a minute. We also manage a winter well programme, and again, JoyceNet is involved in that. And they were awarded a Health Watch Award last year. We also have a complex care project, which is a pilot. And this is really quite exciting because we do have 2 of the GP practices locally in Folkestone that wanted to come forward for this pilot. But this is a remote monitoring project with patients that have been identified as really complex. They've been clinically triaged to be suitable to be part of a remote monitoring programme, which basically means they get some equipment at home and they are able to do their readings every day, and then they send that through to a central data set. But they can also complete a questionnaire, which is about how people are feeling on the day. And this is about us working in a preventative way to help them to manage their conditions as best we possibly can. So Hawkinge and Elam Surgery locally are participating in that project, and we've had some really good outcomes from that project. We also have the development of 2 integrated neighbourhood teams in the Folkestone and Hythe area, and that is Total Health Excellence and the Romney Marsh PCNs. Then we have some examples from the District Health Alliance partnership priorities. So we're going to go through that in a second. And then there's some work that we've been doing in Ashford to look at our independent living schemes, and to look at how we try and keep people as healthy as possible and create that quality of care, quality of life, but within the independent living schemes. And we've done some work in Ashford, and we'd like to roll that out. And I know, again, through the WHIP, we are managing that with Folkestone. So you probably won't be able to see this very well, so I'm just going to read out some of the rationale for some of the work that we're doing around the homeless pathway. So the rationale for the homelessness work is that it exacerbates and contributes, as we all know, to health inequalities among our East Kent population. And it's an independent risk factor for premature mortality and is associated with extreme deprivation and multimorbidity. So in an effort to try and address this, we funded a homelessness pathway team that works from each of the acute trusts in East Kent. And they work as a coordinated multidisciplinary team that are made up of not just NHS workers, but they're made up of housing officers, porch light, support workers. And we also connect with homelessness infrastructure through through the infrastructure that's already available within the community. So in the Folkestone area, we would be linking in with a homelessness nurse that works in the community from one of the district council hubs, and we work very closely with that person to support people on discharge. We also connect with the district council around temporary housing, and this work has proven to, it's been developed over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, but we're starting to see some really good outcomes. And we really want to make sure that we can, if we can, because the health inequalities funding, unfortunately, is time limited money, but we're working at the moment to work with the Integrated Care Board to see if there's a way in which we could get long-term funding for this programme of work. It's absolutely essential that we're working, that we're supporting the homelessness population, because we know that we've got a real issue in East Kent. So some of the things that have come out of this project, as well, has been a mapping exercise with all of our partners to understand what community infrastructure do we have, and are there any risks to those programmes of work? So is funding reducing? And if it is, how might we mitigate against some of that? So influencing our Integrated Care Board is a really important factor in terms of the continuation of this project. The Winter Well programme of work has been going for a couple of years now, and this is about trying to keep our communities well through winter. And they're dedicated programmes of work that we've delivered through the Wellbeing Improvement Partnership. And last year we delivered 3 Winter Well events, and the outcomes from that were that we saw 600 people in total. 53 flu vaccinations were given to school-aged children, and a number were booked to have theirs in school over the following few weeks. There are over 150 people that engaged with the One U Kent service, which is a prevention service. They support people to give up smoking, and they give lifestyle advice. And we provided health interventions at the centres, so like health checks, health MOTs, oral health team were there, and they spoke to 117 people. We also provide winter woolies, and it's kind of like, it helps with, you know, particularly with the cost of living crisis that we're in at the moment. It helps with trying to keep people warm through the winter. So we gave out 400 winter coats last year, hats, gloves and scarves, and 250 hot drinks given to people. They also won a Health Watch award, and we're currently in the process of developing our Winter 24 plan, which Folkestone and Hythe District Council are already far ahead in terms of their planning. They've got several events coming coming on board. And I'm not sure at the end whether Joyce wanted to mention any of those particular programmes of work. The next item that I wanted to talk about was the integrated neighbourhood teams. And I'm going to focus in on the Marsh Primary Care Network because they have they've got two work streams that they're working on. One is around helping to support people and to, well, they'd identified that people were coming forward really late for cancer diagnosis in the local area. So they were coming forward at stage 3 and stage 4. And what we wanted to do through this PCN is to try and encourage people to come forward. So we're doing some education programs with the local community hub. And there's a prevention group that are supporting some comms and engagement around that. But the focus on the prevention side of things is around the breast screening programme, because when we first started to look at the data, we only had access to the 21-22 data. And you can see there that breast screening uptake in the local area was at 57.6%, and the national target was 70%. So we wanted to look at the reasons why that might be. So why aren't people coming forward for their screening programme? We then got a refresh of the data early part of this year, which was the 22-23 data. And we can see that when they did a refresh, that actually the situation wasn't as bad as we thought. But because we'd started the journey, we wanted to continue on that journey. So we've been working really hard to look at whether, where was the location of the bus? Well, it's in Hythe. And we wanted to look at whether there was a possibility that we could move the bus up to the Marsh area. We explored lots of options, but unfortunately we weren't able to locate a place to do that.
Can we come back to that later on, please, Anne?
Of course we can, Paul, no problem. Everyone, we were disappointed that we weren't able to do that. It's complicated. We were working through NHS England and their IMS department. We were working with Hythe to deliver the breast screening programme. There were lots of reasons and risks around moving the bus to that particular area. The breast screening bus also is available every 3 years for your screening programme. And so what we're looking at the moment is we're bidding for some funding for transport for the local population, and there will be a criteria around that. But essentially, we did an engagement session with, we did an engagement survey with the population in the Marsh. We sent out a short survey that went via the primary care groups locally. There were 750 people in the cohort, and we had a 28% uptake to the engagement survey, which was 210 responses. And the reasons for them not attending their screening programme was things like did not receive invites. We followed that up with Hythe, and they're putting measures in place to try and make sure that those invites do arrive. The location of the screening bus came forward as one of the reasons. People reported that they felt that, you know, they were worried and anxious about potentially the pain and possibly the outcome of the screening. Some people were worried about the modesty and embarrassment, and lack of transport came up as well. So we've used some of that information, we fed that back to NHSE, and we're now working on the transport. So plan B is, can we put some transport in place for the local population so that if they are finding it difficult to get to their screening appointment, that we would be able to help with driving that forward. And there's been a lot of work completed with Hythe, with the local district council, with the local voluntary sector organisations and the community hub on the Marsh. So that's been a real good collaboration between all of our partners to try and make this happen. And the NHSE have also submitted a business plan to fund some of this work moving forward. So that one, I'm going to move on now because I feel like I've gone on a bit about that one. Health inequalities I've mentioned a lot of the things that are already in here. And the final slide that I'm just going to focus in on is the District Health Alliance work that's been set up. And again, I invite Joyce now if she wants to contribute to any of this. So I don't want to take any of the credit for any of this work, because it certainly isn't us that's leading this, it is the district council. But essentially the District Health Alliance is a collaboration, again, with lots of partners coming together, looking at data and understanding what their priorities are going to be. So in July's meeting, the focus was on prevention. So they were looking at the whole system obesity update and the local profile, and they talked about the planned Marmot work, and that was introduced to the group. They've got really good links with the Active Kent Club and Community Roadshow, a workforce and volunteering. The Active Kent 24 Move Together October conference has been promoted. There's a public report into the sources of information, and you've got the community fridges have increased from 1 to 4 over 2 years. So
and that was just, sorry, just to interrupt, community fridges was part of the district food network conversation, just to look at healthy eating and food availability. So it was part and parcel of that conversation. It's showing there as in isolation, but it was a bigger conversation. But yeah, carry on.
I was just going to ask Joyce, now, did you want to talk to this little bit of the slide with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was KCC's public health director who came forward and said that he would like to see every district council area have a health alliance. So we are one of 12 health alliances now that have been set up in each district. But KCC Public Health do all of the support, the administration, the setting of the agendas, calling partners. I will say who I think need to be on there when we look at missing colleagues and things that we need additional sort of support on. In its first meeting, it thrashed out 3 very broad priorities. And so we've got ageing well as one priority, prevention, which is what the July meeting focused on, and a broad one around community development and community engagement, so that the community knows where to go to access help and support. And so within the prevention one, there was a lot about how do you prevent sort of the high levels of obesity that parts of our district see. So there was stuff around sports and physical activity, keeping your 50s and 60s well into their 70s and 80s, that kind of conversation. And so that's where all of the sports related and physical activity side of the discussion happened. Then there was more around, it was a very, they're complex and detailed meetings, and we describe a lot. The Marmot work was around the sort of early intervention work that needs to happen, but that's a new piece of work around the main indicators that Professor Michael Marmot had brought together around the key things that impact health inequality, so those wider determinants. So they are around education, skills, that sort of thing. So we will pick up elements of some of the sort of underlying things that we need to do. And I think this is got a bit mixed up with the discussion around cooking and that sort of stuff. Yeah. And so what we were looking at was we've already got a lot of infrastructure and activity going on in the district. So what I was going to say, just to pick up on some of the points that Anne has made, the Winter Well event, the very first one, took place in Folkestone and Hythe in 2022. And that was so successful in some of the elements of work that it did that we repeated that on the Romney Marsh in February of this year. And then what that led to was a series of what we're calling seasonal well events. So we've had a spring well, we've had a summer well, we've got an autumn well planned on the 20th of September, and we've got a further winter well event happening on the 27th of November. So we are going to have a rotation of seasonal well events all over the district. And that brings together so many partners and so much support and help for the public. And it'll have live cooking demos on there, it'll have health providers on there. The health bus came to the last one in July. We had the dental people there, we had a whole host of support services, our own services, welfare, housing, all of that attend to. So we just want to keep this on the road as a seasonal well kind of campaign, spring, summer, autumn, winter. Linked to that is the work that we do in our community hubs. So we have in the winter, and they're going to be running again at our 3 community hubs, Romney Marsh, Hythe and Folkestone. And I can give you details after the meeting on, there's a link on the website anyway on where they're all based. But we will be running warm spaces again, and they will be for people who do not want to, they're making the choice between heating and eating. We don't want to see that. If they want to leave their home unheated for the whole of the day, and people were going for the whole of the day at the hubs, they get hot food, they get access to Wi-Fi, access to all sorts of information and support. They can sit there, join different things that are going on, and also receive warm packs, so heated blankets, flasks, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of work going on warm spaces, and alongside that is a whole host of cost of living interventions. I won't go into those now, but this is a sort of stuff that I talk to the East Kent Whip on, the practical live things that are going on at local level and what we need to do more of, and where we're seeing lack of uptake, and the people that really need the support, are they getting that support? If they're not, what are the barriers in getting that support to those people? Utilising other partnerships like our family hubs and our youth services to get into the schools and do more sort of collaborative work. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes on here, and we've talked about prevention focus. We'll have some of that information, cost of living, alcohol misuse and mental health issues that all need to be addressed. So there's a crossover with our community safety partnership and some of the work that they do, and some of our other partnerships. So I think that's enough from me for now, just to add to what you've said, Anne.
Thank you so much, Joyce. Now it's really valuable, and I think that's the power of us trying to come together much more closely and kind of bringing those partners together. And actually that wraps us up very nicely to answer any questions that you might have. So I'm going to try and stop sharing. Hopefully that will work okay. I'm not used to Zoom. So thank you for the time.
Frank's on mute.
Sorry, just I put it on the mute when the phone rang. Anne was first up.
Okay. Yeah, it's not really a question, but it might be something for Anne to be aware of. Sorry. What was it Joyce?
Joycener.
Joycener. Okay. Apologies for that. So yeah, I'm from Lymm Parish Council. So we only have 1,700 people in our village.
Yeah.
The diversity comes from an ageing population, plus we have a facility for 54 people with learning disabilities, many of whom have physical disabilities.
Right.
And we've started a wellbeing project. I'm the local parish councillor with the Wellbeing Champion title.
Yes.
But the whole parish council supports that work. And we, first of all, fought very hard to get the number 10 bus back, including for school students to get to school as part of the wellbeing. We then issued a directory just for people in Lymm around all sorts of areas of support they could get that would improve their wellbeing. Things about domestic violence and financial advice, etc. Although we're a white, mainly affluent middle class area,
yes,
we do have issues around finance, and we most definitely have issues around ability to use digital information. So we've now formed a tripartite group, which is Kent County Council's digital inclusion team.
Yeah.
And we've got a champion who helps particularly older people or anybody who can't use the NHS app. They have no idea how to use eConsult, and we help them to use those facilities. And then what we also do is we use the link workers. We don't call them social prescribers. There seems to be a bit of a debate going on in the NHS about whether social prescribers are seen as the social. So we call them link workers,
yes,
who obviously, as you know, deal with anything that isn't medical. And they now know we've got people at the village hall, people at the church who are very active, and they coordinate tennis clubs, short mat bowls, older person's luncheon clubs, etc., etc. Also the play groups. And the
Yes.
activity organisers can now refer directly to the link workers. And then people who attend the activities who know of a neighbour who's isolated and lonely, possibly grieving, can be referred to our kind of grief and loss groups. We don't call them death cafes. So just to say that even in an area like Lymm, we're using the umbrella of population health, well-being to actually improve the well-being of our area. And we're hoping to evidence in the fairly near future the decrease in demand on GP time because of this initiative, this tripartite partnership. And I would just advocate that Folkestone and Hythe rural PCN is fantastic. The hub there is so helpful, it's untrue. And I'm also a plea that the digital inclusion team at KCC,
Yes,
their life should be extended for as long as possible because it's absolutely critical. So that's just a little report, if it's of any use for you to know. In a tiny little village called Lymm, that's what we're doing.
that sounds amazing, Anne, and it's really great to hear how proactive the community is, and the connections that you've got with the digital inclusion team's brilliant. And then all of that kind of link worker and the social prescribing, as you described it, through the link workers. I think that's amazing.
Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Anne. As you know, I sit on the Marsh Integrated Neighbourhood team, and I did a little bit of work around the sighting of the bus as well. So I'm very disappointed that didn't end up coming down. The breast screening unit didn't end up coming down to New Romney. We haven't given up on that, by the way. Is that all right? So
that's right.
As you're well aware, I think the Integrated Neighbourhood team has been an absolutely huge success. And just in terms of getting people from various parts of the community around the table with various levels within the NHS has been an absolute. It's been an absolute dream. It really has. The one thing which has gone really quite well, which I know you said it was on your presentation, we never really talked about, was the targeted lung health checks as well. I actually went with Liz Shannon over to Buckland Hospital to see how that was working. And that's absolutely fantastic in terms of the proactiveness of that programme. And targeting those people, as you've said, within, well, the whole of East Kent, actually. And that was now been rolled out to Romney Marsh. Has got to be a real positive in terms of addressing the issues which we know we have based on the data that we've got. So again, I think the targeted lung health checks are absolutely fantastic. And as you've alluded to, one of the breast screening issues is location, and it does come down to transport. And I know we've got the dial-a-ride arrangement, which is coming in this month, which will be very much focused on patient transport and things like that. But as I say, for anybody who wants to see how these things work, get in touch with Leanne Davis or someone like that, and you'll see what a fantastic job this group of people do. It's absolutely amazing. It really is. And thank you very much for that. And thanks, Sam.
Oh, thanks, Paul. And, you know, equally, thanks for all your support, because you've been an absolute, you know, you've been contributing to the discussion. We tried really hard, as you know, to try and get the bus up there. I should have mentioned the lung health check because smoking prevalence is very high. So not only are we working on that proactive piece, but we're also trying to work to look at whether we can increase capacity in the local area to provide smoking cessation support. So there's work going on with the 1U service and the local GP practices to, you know, to train up people within the GP practices to help with that. So yeah, thank you so much. And it's been a real massive team effort. And Leanne has worked incredibly hard to pull it all together, bring all the strands together. But there's been some real drivers in that group that's made that work. So it's a great credit to the whole community to be able to take that work forward.
Thank you. I can't see any more hands raised. No. In which case, Anne and Josta, thank you very much for a very comprehensive report there.
Thank you.
Because there's not more of us here to hear it. Hopefully, at least the members will get the slideshow. So
yeah, I'll make sure I'll get that across to Joyce and Jake, and hopefully that can be sent out. But yeah, thank you so much for your time this evening. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are you happy for us to leave? Are you happy for me to leave? I just wanted to.
Yeah. Yes, if that's.
Thanks,
Sam. You can stay and listen if you wish, but on the other hand, if you don't, that's fair enough. Yes.
Thank you so much. Nice to have met you, Frank, and the rest of the team. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Anne. Bye.
Thank you.
The next item was the Folkestone and Hythe tree maintenance. We were going to have an update from the arboriculturalist manager. That for some reason is not happening, I believe. Is that right, Jake?
That's correct, Frank. Unfortunately, they're unable to attend. So if members have any questions, I'm happy to circulate that to officers and then send out responses to members.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I emailed, I assume whether I'm right or not, Dave Sefton still involved?
That's correct, yes.
I emailed him several weeks ago about a tree problem we've got at our village hall, and I've not heard anything, not had a response of any kind.
Okay, I'll raise that with him and get him to email you.
Thank you. Anybody else got any questions they want for the tree people? No? Right. Thank you. Item 7 is council tax and parish precept guidance. Presentation to be delivered. I presume is probably.
It's good to be me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ola Owolabi. I'm the Chief Financial Services Officer for the council. I will try and share my screen now. And everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. Again, it's that time of the year when we need to start talking about pound sign, which is budget. And we believe the opportunity for us to come and speak to town and parish council in terms of precept and what we have to do. Again, I'm Ola Owolabi. I'm the Chief Financial Services Officer for the council. The main objective for this presentation is to offer guidance and clarity in terms of, I just need to move my, done. The main objective is to offer clarity and guidance in terms of town and parish council preparation for your precept submission for 25-26. This is an area where we believe the council can do more in terms of engagement and in terms of speaking to parish council. Therefore, on the agenda today, I want to touch briefly on the council tax. I want to cover a bit about parish precept. I want to look into how parish precept is calculated. I want to use that opportunity as well to look into why using the latest council tax base is very, very important. I want to look into definition in terms of what is council tax base and bandy equivalent, and go through a precept calculator in terms of how you will calculate your precept. And this is the first year that we're actually trying to do that. In terms of the council tax, as we know, council tax applies to all domestic property and it tends to be paid by the residents. Why do we collect council tax? We need that money to be able to pay for all the services that are being provided by all local authorities. And to ensure that we receive only one council tax bill, every area needs to have one council. And that council tends to act as the billing authorities. The council will collect, in this case, Folkestone and Hythe, we collect the council tax on behalf of all local organizations. That include Kent County Council, Kent Police and Crime Commissioner, Kent Fire and Rescue, and Town and Parish Council. KCC, KPCC, KFRS, and Parish Council tends to tell us, the council, in terms of how much you want at the beginning of the year. And that is what we call a preset. Every parish, council, and other authorities, and they are known as the precepting authorities. Another side to the council tax is that it tends to be controlled by the central government. However, there are some certain exemptions and discounts which are mandated. For most councils, county council, and unitary authorities, council tax increases are capped each year by the government. And if any council wishes to increase that council tax beyond this set level, they must hold a referendum for local residents to decide. However, some local authorities or county council like KCC with social care responsibilities are able to set an additional social care precept to respond to social care pressure. This is just a snapshot of the council tax that was charged in 24-25. What I need to get out from this screen is that 69% of the amount of council tax collected tends to go to the Kent County Council. 13% will go to Folkestone, 11% will go to Kent and Police Crime Commissioner, 4% will go to Kent and Fire Rescue, and only 3% will go to Town and Parish Council. With that clear understanding of what council tax is all about, then what is a parish precept? A town and parish councils tends to get their funding by receiving a small amount of the local council tax. This is referred to as a parish precept and is requested by the parish and town councils from the council. Tends to be before 1st of February for collection from April of that year. Parish council, town and parish councils do not receive any direct funding from the central government. So they tend to rely on their precept plus any other income they can generate from services to be able to support their services. However, how is that precept calculated? The requirement is that precept has to be the difference between the councils, between the parish council's estimated income. Please note, that does not include the council tax for this purpose, and your anticipated spending requirement for the financial year. That is going to be your budget. As you know, your budget tends to be across a financial year, which is going to be from 1st of April to 31st of March. It is important that parish councils agree a budget before they can sell their precept, and both must be agreed by the full parish council. The equation then is tax base multiplied by band D council tax will give you your precept total. However, in deciding your precept, what do you need to consider? I think it is important that you look into your current year spending level for supporting ongoing services. That will include recreation facilities, lighting, cemeteries, insurance, cost of parish office, and so on. This is not the the full list. This is just an example of those ongoing services that you need to support. You need to consider the cost of any additional spending plan or project. A good example is going to be new community benches, new parish notice board, and village sign, and so on. In addition to that, you might be thinking, or you might need a savings for a bigger future project. And for you to be able to do that, you want to make sure that is taken care of as part of your precept and budget requirement. A good example is going to be a cycle route or community facilities. You might even want to create a provision for your contingencies or reserves. So when you are looking at your budget, that will be an opportunity for you to do that. Finally, you want to look at the level of anticipated income from all those services that you are responsible for. That might include, which is an example, rental income, allotment fees, burial fees, grants, and so on. In terms of tax-based and Band-D equivalent, this is part of the precept calculation, and we tend to call it Band-D equivalent. Band-D is the middle band of council tax and is supposed to represent the amount of council tax paid on average property in a particular area. Band-D equivalent provide a measure which allow precepts among councils of different sizes to be compared. The estimated number of Band-D equivalent properties in the tax base will be notified to the town and parish councils by the council prior to setting the precept exercise. And that is something that is very, very important. The required precept tends to be divided by the number of houses in the tax base to be able to arrive at your Band-D equivalent. There might be changes to tax base. What are the causes or potential causes? These are some of the bullet points which might lead to changes to tax base. We might have new homes being built in our area or in the town or parishes. There might be demolitions. There might be a request from owner to change house band category, and if they are receiving council tax support. No matter what we do, I believe using the latest tax base is very, very important. Therefore, town and parish council needs to be mindful of any changes in the tax base during the year. Because if we don't, there will be consequences. Using this example in front of you, let's assume that the precept amount for a particular year is £100. In 24-25, the number of equivalent Band-D houses is 10. Therefore, that is going to be £10 per house, effectively dividing this 100 by 10. However, in 25-26, the tax base has increased by 2 to 12. If nothing is done, you will easily divide that 100 by 12. That will be £8.33 per house. Therefore, if you do not change the amount of precept you are requesting, which should have been 10 times 12, giving you 120, then each house will pay less council tax. That is very, very important to know. The idea behind this then, in terms of having the latest council tax base, is that the more residents you have, the more need that you'll be required or services you'll be required to provide, and more funding will be needed. Please note that the percentage Band-D charges increase is going to feature on the resident bill, not the increase in council total precept. I think that's a very, very important message to take with you. Here is just a good example in terms of a change in tax base and a change in precept. The first example here is where we have a tax base increase. So in this example, in 24-25, the tax base was 1280. In 25-26, that tax base has changed to 1345. However, the precept for both years has not changed at all. We've got 75,315.5 in 24-25, the same amount in 25-26. The implication of that then is that the 24-25 Band D council tax will be 58.82. In 25-26, that will be 55.98, a slight drop in the council tax that you are going to charge in 25-26. And the main reason for that is that your tax base has changed, but your precept has not changed. So therefore, you have an increase in tax base of 65. In percentage time, that would be 5.08. No change in your precept at all. And that will result in a decrease in council tax to the tune of £2.84. In percentage term, that will be 4.83. However, if you look at the other side of the equation, where the precept increase, but no change to the council tax base. In this example, the tax base was 1280.4. In 25-26, no change, the same 1280.4. However, your precept has changed from 75315 to 76876. The net impact of that then is that in 24-25, your council tax, your Band D council tax is going to be 58.82. In 25-26, the Band D council tax is going to be 60.04. And one of the reasons for that is that although your precept has increased, your tax base has not changed. So the increase or decrease in council tax in tax base is going to be 0, while the increase in precept is going to be 1,560.55, which is a slight 2.07 increase, percentage increase. Increase in council tax is going to be £1.22. In percentage time, that will be 2.07. The question that have been asked as well is that why the council or county council or other unity authority are being subjected to a cap on the council tax, how about parish precept? Currently, I'm not aware that there is any cap on the amount that parish council can raise via their precept. Like I said, district and county council are capped. Central government, although central government expect parish town and parish councils to demonstrate restraint, they should be able to explain and justify any larger precept increases. Once the parish council have approved their precept, they must inform the council, and it is then added to the resident council tax bill. The council tends to pay the precept to parish council in 2 installments, tends to be in April and September of every year. In terms of confirming your precept then, the council is not expecting town and parish councils to confirm their precept before December. And one of the reasons is that we, the council, needs to provide you with the draft tax beds information before you can finalize your precept. From our hand, that information will not be available until the end of November, and we will give this to you or provide you with that information definitely by 9th of December 2024. However, we will require notification of your 25-26 precept amount by the end of January, 38th of January 2025 at the latest. And that timetable is very, very critical. We are relying on that timetable to be able to finish our overall budget for approval proposal, which will be presented to full council meeting in February. Without that notification from you, it's going to be difficult for us to be able to understand your requirement. A bit in terms of how to calculate your precept using a precept calculator that will be providing this year. There will be an Excel spreadsheet, which is a tax-based calculator for 25-25. This will be issued on the 9th of December 2024. This will be a standard template, largely pre-populated for you, with clear boxes in terms of the areas that you need to complete. You have to complete the budget template based on what you will need to spend in 25-26. Please check the reasonableness of the percentage increase on the summary sheet as well. In terms of the calculators, precept calculators, which I will demonstrate in a minute, you need to select your parish or town council from the drop-down list. Number 2 is to fill the date of the meeting at which the precept was approved. 3 is to fill in either the town or parish precept or the Band D tax charge. Please and please do not fill both. You will be required to provide us some information about your gross expenditure, income, or any use of your reserve. This should match the preset amount, which will be shown above the template. And please, you need to review this and check that is equal to 0. Mainly, this is required to double check against the preset amount. We will require you to fill the authorizer details. That might be the chairman, the clerk, or chief finance officer. And we will require you to provide us with your bank detail. Again, this is something that we've got on file already, but it's just good for us to check that against our record. This is how the precept calculator is going to look like. I will just try and demonstrate the look of the. Can I just confirm that you can see my new screen? Jake, can you see my screen?
I can, yes, Ola.
So you can see the Excel spreadsheet.
Oh no, sorry. If you
I'll stop sharing.
To the sharing.
Yeah. Okay. I'll stop sharing now. Then I'll share the Excel spreadsheet separately.
There we go.
Thank you.
That's fine.
Just a minute. Right. Here is a copy of the spreadsheet I was talking about. Here is the template that will be sending to you. That template will be coming with a clear instruction in terms of what you have to do. And these are the instructions that I went through earlier in terms of selecting, completing the date, fill the preset amount, information that you have to provide, and that we need that by January. This has to be emailed back to a member of my team called Victoria. So let's have a look at the calculator itself. Here is the calculator that I've been talking about. I think for consistency, to make sure that everyone, all the town and parishes are doing the same thing, this is what we are going to use this year. The spreadsheets are fully protected. You will not be able to change anything outside the areas that have been highlighted. So you will only be required to complete all the highlighted area. So if I can quickly demonstrate this, let me pick a council. Let me pick Sandgate. As soon as you pick a parish council, town council, the spreadsheet will immediately populate that with your information. With this example, you can see that once you pick the name of your council, you put a date in here, it will automatically populate the information for previous year which we've got on file. Like I said, by the end of November, we will have the tax base for 25-26, and this particular template will be populated before we send it out to you. So once you choose your parish or town council, both 24-25, 25-26 will be populated. In this example, because we haven't got a new tax base, the old tax base is repeated in 25-26. You'll be required to put your precept here or use this cell to input your Bandi tax charge. If I can quickly demonstrate one of them, if I put 49.8 in there, enter, that automatically populates everything using the old task-based information. So let me delete this, not to corrupt this. So moving down, you will have a cost breakdown where you have your gross expenditure, your income. The objective of this is mainly to make sure that the figure that you've got above the line can be shared and it can be zero here. That is the main objective, is ability to compare. However, that is a very useful information when we are pulling all the returns together. We will encourage parish and town councils, might be the chair, the clerk, or the chief finance officer, to date the day of the meeting and when you are sending that back to us. And we will like the name of the chairman or the clerk or chief finance officer that is doing this. We will also encourage you to provide us with your bank account details. We have already got this on file, but it's just good to confirm the information we are receiving and to ensure that that reconciles back to what we've got on file. Again, the most important bit is that once you click on this, if I change that from Sandgate to another parish, you could say automatically it will change and populate everything for you. So what you have to do, you need to complete the date, complete either this cell for precept or this cell for band discharge, and then provide all the other information. I'm going to stop sharing this now and then go back to my previous. So what I've just went through is the example of the template that will be coming to you on the 9th of December. And again, the question is, what is this all about? all this means that even if the parish or town councils request the same financial precept for the whole parish for the next financial year, however, due to changes in the number of Band D equivalent properties in the parish, the individual precept property may change. Therefore, this can result in an individual percentage change in precept, either rising or falling, even when the parish precept as a whole has not changed. I think that's a very clear message. And one of the reasons why we need to make sure we are using the latest tax base when we are calculating our precept. Again, a reminder in terms of the submission date, that date at the end, 38th of January, is a very, very critical date. If you can get this information to us before that date, I'm sure Ola will be saying thank you to you, but please we need to get that information by that critical date of 38th of January. I will stop sharing and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ola. And one thing which sort of flags up is with the small councils, which Folkestone is obviously one of them, a relatively small increase in precept in terms of pounds, shillings and pence comes up as a very big increase in percentage terms, or it potentially can. That's the only problem with using percentages.
Yeah. Again, I think that is possible. But once we are able to check those percentages that they are reasonable, we can explain the reason why they've jumped up. I can understand because it's a little parish or a little town councils, a slight change might show a huge percentage, but I think it's the understanding the reason behind it and to be able to explain it, because there will be questions, probably from your council taxpayer to say, oh, why are we paying 5%? Why somebody is paying 2%? There definitely needs to be a reason behind it. And once we can explain that, we should be good. Thank you.
We had this 3 or 4 years ago when we went from having a voluntary clerk to a proper clerk, and therefore had to pay the proper rate, as you might say, and we put it up by 50%, and only one person questioned it.
A 50% job considered resulting in a lot of queries. Thank you.
Paul first.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much for that. I think it's really useful if we could have that presentation sent out to us
Sure.
so that we can actually get it to the finance class and get it into our F&GPs and what have you. But I think in the past, it's not having the tax-based information early enough has been a little bit of an issue, because I mean, we've already started our process of putting together what we want to do, but having that tax base information is critical, because then you can make a decision about you know, where you want to position your precept and what you're likely to be able to do, and understand when you're doing that the impact it's likely to have on your residents. So I think it's great that we've got that for the 9th of December. We will hold you to it. I'm sure you're aware of that. And having that calculator is fantastic, because it means we all do the same stuff all at the same time.
Yes,
and
thank you.
The only thing I would perhaps like to have had was maybe to have had a box on there that allowed you to put some notes in. I mean, you were saying you want to know the date of the meeting and the minute number and that kind of stuff, which is things that we normally communicated to you by the parish anyway. But having that date now is great, because it means that we can focus, and I think all the parishes can, on what they need to do in terms of positioning their meetings and their full council meetings. So thank you very much for that. I think that's it's very easy to fill in as well. I mean, how could it possibly go? How could it possibly go wrong?
Exactly. Thanks so much for your comment. And just to quickly come back, that it would have been easier to have the task base now. Seriously, if that is within my power, I can give it to you tomorrow. However, there are so many processes that we have to go through between October and November, verifying, confirming to make sure everything is correct. And once that has been done, we hopefully by 9th of December, I can assure you by 9th of December, there'll be something coming out to you with that template. In terms of additional box, yeah, I will take that comment away and see if I could add a box for comments. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Frank. I just also wanted to add my thanks to Ola and the team. And as Paul says, I think that spreadsheet in Ready Reckoner is a major step change. It's been just done on the back of an email for many years and on a letter, and free-forming, explaining how to do it. And some people have done it, have had unexpected consequences when they have seen their band D figure go up by a larger percentage than they expected it would happen, because they hadn't seen how that plays against their tax base. So quite often people say, well, we didn't put our precept up very much at all, but you're saying our council tax has gone up 10%. What have you done? And the answer was, well, because your tax base dropped and you didn't take an account of that. So I think it's really important that we've got a common way of doing it. I think that the spreadsheet looks good and works well, and thank you for going through that with me earlier. Having had the detailed explanation of how the tax base works out, I can only back up, Paul, that when Ola says it can't be earlier than that, it can't due to the process. They literally are doing a process against the valuation office of counting every house in the district and then parishing that and then discounting that against those who are in council tax reduction, etc. So the number isn't just a straight count. You have to average it in order to get it to a band D figure anyway, and then you have to discount it for council tax reduction things and numbers that you don't know until a certain period in time. So we're not delaying it just because we think that 9th of December is a good date, but just because there are numbers on the process in order to get there. But hopefully if everyone's got an understanding of when those things are coming and what they are and why they impact, and I said I know a lot of parishes haven't previously understood the impact of a tax base and what that means. Hopefully by having all those things together it will help, and I really do appreciate that. I think if we can get that the presentation and be a copy of that spreadsheet to circulate with the minutes, I think an early look at it by parish clerks, I think they would welcome that, even though that they will then get a fresh version on the 9th of December with their 25-26 tax base filled in. So thank you very much again for that, Ola. Much appreciated.
Well done. Thanks so much, Councillor Prater, for your comments. I appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions? Can't see any hands raised. In which case, Ola, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
You all fill them in properly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 8 is the EU entry-exit system update. I don't know who's taking this one.
I've got that one tonight, Frank. Thank you.
Ewan. Thank you.
And I guess after a couple of fairly detailed presentations, slides, what you really want is a slide show from me, isn't it? But I promise you this will be a fly through. I've only got a couple of slides just to position this item. And I thought if I can I'll just do the share my screen, but if you don't mind. Share. Okay. Has that come up for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so not to go too quickly through this, but just a couple of slides to talk about the entry and exit system, the EU entry and exit system, which is coming to us. And I think members will be aware of the background to this. It's been in the offing for quite some time. And this, of course, is the system that will replace the kind of physical stamping of passports when you go through passport control, either arriving or departing destinations. And has the potential to cause some significant challenges for those council areas around the M20 and around, obviously, the port, Eurotunnel, etc. So what we know so far, The go live date is going to be the 10th of November at 2 a.m. I don't know why it's 2 a.m., but 2 a.m. And what we're gearing up and working towards is that date with a whole number of partners. Now, I think the important thing to say is that, you know, this is not something that obviously the district council has much control over, but we are working with partners from government, from highways, national agencies, county council and district councils, and indeed town and parish councils as well, to try and ensure that when this does go live, that we will be best placed to support whatever impact happens. So Port of Dover, Tunnel, and St Pancras for Eurostar. And this really is basically a whole new system, which means that passengers will be fingerprinted and have their face photographed as a set of biometrics. And the whole system's been brought in to improve border security. It's, you know, management of the EU border, and it's really positioned around fighting against terrorism, serious crime, and illegal migration. So that's what we know so far. We know it's going to happen, and it's coming the 10th. But I guess the important thing for tonight for us is to understand what's happening in the Folkestone Hythe area, or what we're doing about it as a district council in particular, with that lead locally. And we know, and you will be aware of the impact of Operation Brock on the M20 and the challenges that does present at times with tailbacks from traffic and traffic impacts, in particular the last couple of summers when Brock has been on, has caused problems. And we know that our communities and our businesses have raised with us numbers of problems and impacts that they feel when there is a problem and when there is a significant level of congestion. So we have been doing a lot. We have sent letters and communicated to all the affected communities, or communities that we know are likely to be affected, and that was in July, talking about EES, but also just about Brock as well, and just highlighting things that they may want to consider. You know, if there's going to be if there's going to be potential for traffic impacts, that means there's traffic jams across our communities, and getting in and out is difficult. You know, if you have a need to make sure you have the right medication from chemists, then can you plan in advance? Shopping may be a problem, or getting and talking to our community supports around Meals on Wheels, for example, these kind of things, trying to plan in advance and raise awareness, because we think the more awareness we can raise, the better prepared we will be. A very important part of this has been around getting information from town and parish councils, and we sent a survey, I think earlier this year, I assume, and that relationship with you as town and parish councils has to continue, and particularly that local knowledge on the ground is going to be so important as things move forward. As a council, we're putting in place our business continuity plans, we call it, but we're also encouraging other organisations to ensure that they have business continuity in place as well, and that's including the business base across the potentially affected areas. We've set up a dedicated email address where we're encouraging everyone who's got some information to provide or questions around this to use. And so when we send the slides out to you afterwards, very pleased if you would promote that email address across all your contact lists and locally, please. We're working a lot with the partners in what's called the Kent and Medway Resilience Forum, and that's kind of the emergency planning forum, which is led by Kent County Council, working with police, fire, district councils, brings together all the major services. And what we are doing is working through some desktop exercises to plan and to work out what to do if there are significant traffic impacts when the new system is brought into play. So my final slide is just to give a little bit of more context on this. And this Kent and Medway Resilience Forum, so the emergency planning body for Kent. We play into that at certain levels. So there's always a strategic level group, and that's where sort of chief executives or senior directors for organizations meet and provide direction and strategic guidance on issues when an emergency happens. The tactical level is people who are charged with actually ensuring that actions are delivered to mitigate any problems or any issues. So, we're at the senior level, we're at the tactical level, but really the most important bit for us as a district council is this community level and the community impact group. So there's a group set up and it's chaired by Dover District Council and Folkestone and Hythe District Council. And that's where we have a very keen eye on the impacts communities are feeling through any issues that arise from, well, any emergency, but in this context, the deployment of the EES system. There will also, you'll be aware of one of the major issues here is tailbacks, particularly in the M20, M2 surrounding trunk roads. And so there is a very important group that's managed by Kent County Council, which is driver welfare and ensuring that if there are people in queues for significant periods of time, and we know that can be hours and hours in all different sorts of weather, there's a welfare group in place that can respond and provide to the needs of people who are stuck and literally jammed. As a council, we are meeting regularly internally as officers to make sure as many officers as possible in the council are up to speed on what's happening, on the potential impacts, and then can play a role supporting the emergency response if it's required. And at the bottom, but no means least, the last, a communication cell. And the communication cell is really where we agree comms messaging through all the partners to send out messaging both at a national, a Kent, an East Kent, and indeed a local level. And we are very intent on ensuring that we can try and get local messaging out that means something to people in the affected areas. So I will stop there, if that's okay. Stop sharing. Sorry, I have cantered through that, but I was aware that you've had a long shift already. Very happy to take any questions, but I would also say, Frank, if I may, that we will continually come back to you as town and parish councils with updates, because that communication link from the council to you and then out into communities is so vital. So I'll stop there. Happy to take any questions or points.
Robert, you've got your hand up. Then Ted.
I've got a quick question, Ewan. I'm in Newington, and obviously we come out onto the A20, and we are fully aware that the A20 does often get full up and get quite blocked out. But a couple of years ago, what happened was people started to come down through Hawkinge and along the top of the ridge and through Paddlesworth, and they completely and utterly blocked the lane from Paddlesworth all the way down through Peen and Newington to the A20, and we actually became completely marooned for many hours. In fact, a whole day. Yes. We had to open up the village hall, the barn, and the church for the people who were stuck in the lane to go to the toilet, to have water, and so on. I just wonder if there's any way that could be, I don't know, stopped or monitored or controlled in some way or another. Because from us here, even if the A20 is blocked, we could normally go out through Paddlesworth and get to Etching Hill or Elam or Elements. But once people from abroad had started coming down and had completely blocked it off, it's quite a serious issue. Obviously, the emergency services couldn't access us or anything. So just a thought. That's all.
I think it's a point very well made, and one that I know that your local community has made directly through members and to the agencies involved. And I would say that every action we're trying to do to avoid that happening including, I believe, that through at national level, they're looking at how to hold traffic in certain areas to doing that. And I think on our watch list of key areas where communities may need support from the community cell is absolutely the area you're talking about. So it's a point very well made.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And thanks for the presentation, Ewan. I've seen the presentation before, as you'll know, although the date has changed on it. It was October, as I seem to recall previously, and has now become the 10th of November. I think the EES email address is really important and a really useful tool for town and parishes. So thank you for that, because as I understand it, that's for town and parishes and the councillors to report back the local information about what's happening. So if bad stuff is going down, that's where we tell people locally, and that's where we tell people it is. I think what would be a little bit useful about that is if we can get that message to both councillors and to town and parish councils. What are you looking for to know of that? I think what you're looking for to know is that this road is unexpectedly gridlocking. We're opening the village hall. We're starting in order to actually give somewhere to go to the loo that year, so that it gives you information that you haven't got from elsewhere, but just some steers on that. You're not going to want emails every hour from a town, from a parish saying everything is fine. You want exception reporting, and you want exception reporting which you think is specifically about Channel Tunnel and Dover access. And I think it's going to be important to make sure that the clearer you are about what you want, the less likely you are to get a series of emails about stuff that you don't want. Final point of special pleading. Now it's coming in on the 10th of November, and the 11th of November is a bank holiday in France. I have a coach tour booked to go to Sangatte on the 12th of November. So if no one hears from me until the 16th of November, I'm somewhere in the Channel Tunnel area. Please get me out.
Thank you, Tim. And actually, it's a point well made about being prescriptive. I think the other thing that is very helpful on a local level is any intelligence locally of things that people think might happen, because it wouldn't be unlike a set of temporary traffic lights to be at a building site somewhere that really might cause a problem, and just to flag it up to us as well. So I will work with Dee on getting some messaging out, because we'll be coming out with comms again probably mid-October, I would suggest, in advance.
Paul.
Oh yeah, thanks, Ewan. Actually, that's a really good point, because we're already receiving notifications of road closures going into October and November from Streetworks. So again, I think what we should be looking at, and certainly for the main arterial routes, would I suspect to be a cessation of roadworks for a period of time, at least for the first couple of weeks with this transitioning to the new system, so that we're not then having to go back and unpick things. It's about being a bit more proactive about that side of it. And I've not heard anyone from KCC Highway. I haven't heard Tony Hills talking about it. He might have done it. I might have missed it. But I've not heard of that specifically about, what are we doing to keep Stone Street open? What are we doing to keep the 259 open, the 2070 and the rest of it? So for me, it would be that proactive part from KCC Highways helping the situation, rather than us finding on the 11th of November all these people coming back to work and the roads all dug up. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think, again, a very good point. And I think that this is not an issue that's lost on KCC, and in terms of our feedback with them as well, because we know that there's obviously things have happened in the past and can happen. What I would say is this is starting November in theory to get it working and make sure the systems work right, and it should be a bit quieter. But what is worrying us a little bit is what happens as we move toward Christmas, and then kind of February break. Then Easter actually is the one we're most worried about, because you can see it building up. So I think it's not a test and learn in the sense that we're testing the system, but I think there's a lot of learning for us out of this first period. You're right. But I will make a note of that and pass it in to the team who are working with KCC closely on this, because I think it's a really valid point again. Thank you.
Going on from what Robert had to say just now, one of the biggest problems is when they allow too many lorries to join Dover Tap, which means they have to shut the Roundhill tunnels. And once that does, it puts the whole of the district into, as you know, into gridlock. Somehow along the line, the Resilience Forum ought to be made totally aware that whatever happens, they mustn't shut the Roundhill tunnels, because that does cause so much trouble.
Absolutely, and I think again, I just go back to the point. I think there are plans being looked at where particularly HGVs can be held in the network before getting to that stage and managed. I don't know much about the detail of it, but it's certainly, I think the impact of TAP plus Brock is certainly not lost on KCC highways agencies, and I'm certain they will do whatever they can to avoid it.
Any other questions, comments? I see no hands, so thank you very much, Ewan.
Great. I think I'm next as well.
We'll see you next time. I expect to carry the latest news.
Well, no presentation for this one, and I thought I understood that what we were looking for is an update on the position of the Folkestone Sports Centre Trust, and to be honest, there's not much of an update further to what's been in public already. Very unfortunately, the trust has gone into administration. The council's role with the trust, we don't own the trust, we don't manage it. It's independent, but we are a grant funder of the trust, and that was in particular to support swimming lessons and health activity. We acted very quickly once the terrible news came through that the trust had gone into administration and people lost their jobs. So we hosted an employment event in the council where the local college, DWP, other agencies, ourselves, our welfare team, our economic development team came together to offer advice to anybody who'd unfortunately made unemployed. And I think we had around 40 people come to that to get advice. So that was a pretty swift response from the council and partners to at least to put in place what support we could. The current position overall is that a company called Opus have been appointed as the administrators. So they are now in charge of the process. And you may know administration process is highly technical and has a fairly strict set of rules that you have to abide by. I understand that a company called Christie & Co have been appointed to, in effect, try and sell the site and the leisure operation, and that's public knowledge. That will be a publicly available prospectus, because obviously the one of the roles of the administrator is to get as much money back into the system as possible to support creditors. So we're open to working with anyone who shows an interest in coming forward and perhaps wants to take on the site. Nothing to talk about in public at all yet, but I'd be very hopeful that there may be some interested parties come forward that wish to take on the running of the leisure centre, or to some degree the running of the leisure centre. And as a council, we've been very open in saying we'll help as far as we can with any interested parties. So, I mean, that's all I can really say. And Mike, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else from your perspective.
Put my hand up, thanks. I was so eager. It's probably worth, just because somebody mentioned it to me actually, about the likelihood of houses being built on the site. And at the moment, there's covenants on the site, isn't there, which would prevent that. So if that remains the case, then it has to be used for leisure use, doesn't it? The site, but that's not to say that that's completely set in stone, that couldn't change, or indeed that some of the site might be used for housing, possibly to fund reopening of the sports centre at some time. But I know that's an issue because there was coverage in the local paper, wasn't there, talking about it could be used for housing.
Yes, you're right, and there's also planning policy matters as well, which provide a I'm not going to say safeguard because you can never say never in any of this, but there are some planning policy issues that would have to be addressed as well.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a site of a few parts, actually. It's not a single entity in terms of the covenant. There are different parts because some was acquired from the health authority some years ago, and the covenants are different on that section of the site. And a third layer over the top of that is that a large percentage of the site has flood risk as well, and has been prone to flooding. So by the time you layer on the existing covenants, which I understand the Radnor estate are very keen to maintain across a large area of the site, the local planning and flood risk at that stage, there may be areas of the site that have lesser covenant, and they might be something that a developer or a operator who looked at selling a section of the site may get some leeway with. But I think the huge majority of the site, you would spend a very, very long time fighting to overturn covenants and planning law and flooding guidance. You would lose an awful lot of time and money trying to buy that site for development exclusively.
Okay.
Meanwhile, you and we continue to maintain Hythe pool to the best of our ability, don't we? And that's been, I think attendance has doubled there since the sports centre closed in Folkestone.
We're trying not to mention how lucrative that's been.
Couldn't possibly comment.
Okay. That, I think, is it, gentlemen. And the ladies are all gone. So thank you very much. Could I ask Jake to hang on a couple of minutes after everybody else has disappeared, please?
Great stuff. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Frank, for sharing. Bye-bye now.
Thanks,
Bye.
Frank. Bye, Ewan. Bye, Tim. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye, Jeff.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, Jake. We've got to get to the bottom of this lack of people knowing about it, haven't we?
Yeah, so obviously I'm going to have a look into it because obviously Jane emailed in, and I can see that it's in her calendar. But again, I'm going to have a word with Alex, who
Of course,
administers
I emailed him a couple of days ago asking him to send the link to everybody. I didn't realise she wasn't there.
Yeah, so
and then the email to say he wasn't there didn't come until well, you obviously saw the email I sent in to the committee services, because I didn't know who would be taking his place. So it didn't come until very late.
Yeah, so I'll be having a word with Alex and Gemma to see what we can do to make sure more reminders go out for members.
Did you get the fact that Peter Coe had sent his apologies?
I didn't, no, but I'll note it.
Yeah, he sent them to me, and obviously didn't forward them on. So
okay, that's fine. I'll note it on the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Jake.
All right.
Yeah, good night.
Have a nice evening.
Cheers then. Bye.
Take care. Bye.